What's happening, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the CoffeePump Podcast. In today's episode, we're talking about nuclear energy. Today, we have Agar Omondi. Agar Omondi's background is in nuclear and quantum engineering from institutions like KAIST, based in South Korea. He also has a degree from KTH, Royal Institute of Technology, based in Sweden, and University of Paris Saclay, based in France. Agar is the first African to get MNA certification from E028 and holds a postgraduate diploma in project management and entrepreneurship from the ESET Business School in Barcelona, Spain. He has worked on advanced reactor projects such as the lead bismuth, I can't even pronounce this, eutactic accelerator driven MYRRHA. MIRA. Currently under construction at the Belgian Nuclear Research Center, campus in Mol, Belgium. And he's back now in Kenya to talk to us about the future state of the nuclear energy sector. We hope you guys enjoy the podcast. As you can see, he's correcting me in quite a lot of these things. We're still getting used to these terms. Yes. Hope you guys enjoy it.
Agar or Omondi?
I think Agar is better. Omondi, I don't know. I've just been reminded in the worst way possible that Kenya is tribalist.
No, Omondi is a good name. You should wear it with pride, bro.
People make judgments about you.
Really?
You have an Omondi.
In this day and age?
And you find it from the most weird sort of circles.
Give me an example.
I'm at Cheche Bookshop in Lavington, and I'm just chilling there with those very good-looking Somali ladies. And then one of them asks me, what's your first, not your first name, what's your middle name, what's your Luo name? And they say Omondi. And then these are girls who have grown up in Nairobi and gone and studied abroad. And then they start telling me about how people from my tribe are womanizers and they're supposed to be very arrogant. They're supposed to blow their own trumpet and all that. And I'm like, who the
That's a compliment.
No, it's not good. Because, it's really bad because my grandpa, I think the last person to grow up like 100% in Ocha, Homa Bay, Kindu Bay or whatever, was like my grandpa. My dad grew up here in Nairobi.
Okay.
So I'm like 2 generations off, but then I'm still being linked by these other guys, they're called flamboyant lawyers, Kileleshwa and Kilimani. I don't like it.
I think in some way, I guess, the weird thing in Kenya is it's not white against black. It's same color, racial, against different cultural backgrounds.
Exactly.
Because your father speaks a different language versus mine. And it delves down into our entire society.
Yeah.
But anyway, we've been trying to do I think it's jinx. I think the nuclear society, the greater nuclear society, there's just so much curse on nuclear energy that every time we try and meet, something happens. Yeah,
those guys are the coast. You know the coast, the way we hear that, I don't know, they have like genies and all that.
Yeah.
Like the coast is supposed to be a very superstitious region in Kenya, right?
Bro.
So those guys basically cast like a spell that podcast you guys have been.
Is that why I have a Homa?
Probably.
By the way, have you tried this? Just try that.
Check a nice. My sinuses are all cleared.
The thing is, I saw that in Thailand. Apparently, it helps with just clearing your nasal tract, and if you have a flu, rather than having Vicks-Kingo, you just carry this around, you open it up.
And like, can you feel like it makes you, like I was feeling a bit of like my thoughts were clouded, but now it's very, very sharp.
Kim, you want to try?
Yes. Especially me.
Inafungua.
Yeah. It's like that thing I normally see guys, I used to see guys within the gym, the ammonia salt.
Yes.
The thing where guys sniff it and it's like.
So this is more, I guess it just helps clear your, if you have a flu, it helps with that. So the curses from Mombasa we're getting will not stop us.
That's to ward them off,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what do you think? If we sell this in Kenya, you think it'll make a difference?
So many people would buy it, I think. Especially during the cold seasons. Rather than getting PK, those PKs for 5 bob and it's like 4 whatever.
Yeah, man.
You can have this.
It was actually really nice. It's really nice. Even if you sell this for 250 over here.
Guys are going to buy.
And then you can market it as some Thailand thing like in Italy. On the back end, we'll be assembling these things in Babadogo.
Yeah.
In fact, I can try. Sindio, Kim, product manager. Then we won't be doing this podcast over here.
Yeah. And the fact that you'll be like the only guy who's doing it, you can like run away with like myths about what it does.
Yeah.
You normally see those posters on the electricity poles. I don't know, daktari kutoka Tanga.
Exactly.
So you say rather than paying a daktari kutoka Tanga like 8 Gs,
Yeah.
you can buy this for like 500 bob.
Guys, I'm not sure if you guys can see this product. Is there anyone selling this in Kenya? Let me know. Otherwise, Agar, we're starting a business here.
Yeah.
This stays between us.
Yeah.
But before we start off, bro, what the hell is nuclear energy? Tell me about nuclear energy.
Yes.
And why is there stigma around it?
Yeah. So nuclear energy is basically a manifestation of the progress our species have made around 1800, 1900, where we discovered that like there was a lot more going on with physics than what we knew. Right?
Yeah.
Before that, you had a very, how can I say it? A very Boolean perspective on physics. Everything was very discrete. But then the quantum revolution basically made us as a species, specifically the physicists first, and then the rest of us, we have a lot more of a statistical view of nature. The moment we're able to think like that, we're able to see that there's a way to convert mass into energy, right?
Yes.
So the most famous example of that was what he published in 1905, right? That energy mass equivalency. And so it became very obvious that there's a lot of energy packed in mass, regardless of whether it's big or small.
Yeah.
But the thing we were able to do was to apply some of the implications that Einstein made with his equation. And we discovered that if we split an atom, if we're able to literally interact with the nucleus specifically, not even the atom, the nucleus itself, we can harness this large amount of energy.
Right.
So nuclear radiation is divided into two. You have like the electromagnetic spectrum, where you have like the light, like photons, ultraviolet to infrared. And then you have the particles, the likes of alpha radiation, which is basically the nucleus of helium. You have neutrons, of course. Then you have the electrons.
Right.
So the summary of it is that nuclear is basically two. It's either the electromagnetic spectrum or the subatomic particles, which is electrons, neutrons, and the nucleus
Yes.
of helium. So as a species, we used to burn fossil fuels to create steam to run our turbines. But then we can do a lot more if we split the nucleus and we take advantage of that. There's something called the mass deficiency.
Yes.
If you have like two separate masses, if you combine them, you expect that the mass is going to be the same, but it's never the same. There's a bit of a discrepancy. So that discrepancy there is what is energy.
Okay.
Like if you look at it in terms of mass, that missing one, it's usually very negligible. But if you look at it in terms of energy, it's next level, dude. It's like 1,000 times, not even 1,000, 3 million times more than what you would get from an electron.
So the basis is obviously it's power.
Yes.
You can generate power.
Yes.
I think the stigma around it is all tied to initially with Hiroshima, it being used as a weapon.
Yes.
Then thereafter, I think recently in Japan, there was an incident. Which city?
Fukushima, that was
Fukushima.
Yeah.
Chernobyl, popular incidences. And then our very vocal post about it doing something to plant life.
Yes.
Maybe we could start off with that stigma. Like, if Kenya were to move towards a nuclear energy model, what is the risk versus reward ratio, like from your perspective? And why are the Mombasa guys going crazy?
Yeah, the Mombasa guys like there was a time when I was a bit dismissive of what their sort of aversion to new technology was.
Yeah,
it's there's a phase we all go through that when we are young and you don't understand just how nuanced the world is. But I came to understand that the phobia they have is very genuine. I like to really focus on their grievances rather than sort of applying the global, because the global grievances that people have about nuclear, it's a bit different from what you have in Kilifi.
Yeah.
So the biggest issue there has to be dispossession, kind of. These guys are coming from outside, the Omondis. I was telling you I don't use Omondi. So these Omondis are coming here and they want to impose on us something that we don't want.
Right.
So that has been a theme along the coast for centuries. You had the Omanis coming in and they're subjugating the local people. You had there's a time like all the way up until Kismayo, it was, I don't know, part of Zanzibar, there's like Sultanate there. So these sort of outsiders coming to impose something on us, it's something that is hardwired, hard-coded. You're the one who was telling me about culture thing. You remember that thing you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, so for them it's that.
Right.
It's that. And of course, there are always going to be people who are going to try to benefit from it.
Is there was something I read along the lines of it's endangering the marine life. Is there an actual cause, and is that factual?
It's not factual, to be totally honest. It's not. So one of the talking points that there are people normally mention is that the fact that you have a nuclear power plant close by and it's discarding 2/3 of the thermal heat generated in the core, that you're discarding this into the environment, this is going to somehow increase the temperature of the water, which you're using to cool your reactor. And that's going to have a deleterious effect on the tiny planktons and the tiny critters living on the coral reef. But that's not really the case. By the time water is coming into the reactor, it's sort of heated up. And the specific processes, the specific designs you can do to your nuclear plant, so that when it's going back into the ocean, the difference is minute. It's not even, you can't even notice it, right?
So the side effects are negligible then?
Yeah, they're negligible. But the fact that you have things like Chernobyl showing the way dogs were irradiated that remained in Pripyat, it's something that is a lot more anytime you go on YouTube or you go on any website and you type nuclear, the first thing you're going to see are zombies and cyclops and dogs.
Exactly. It's the negative side of things.
Yeah, so it's imprinted in them, and you have people who actually are afraid because they think that if something happens wrong in the reactor, you're going to see a mushroom cloud. So yeah.
Exactly. So I mean, there's a bunch of things we've identified. Obviously, that nuclear energy is the next threshold of power, right? In terms of generating. There are certain risks associated with it. The stigma in terms of what's happening in Kenya, especially with the course that will affect marine plant life, we've established that it's null and void, and to that extent, it won't really damage. So I have maybe two questions. Why do we focus on having a nuclear power plant in the coast versus, let's say, in Nairobi or somewhere else? What is the reasoning? This whole conversation started with building it in the coast. And then my follow-up question is now about the incidences like Chernobyl and how the nuclear technology has evolved since then. And maybe we can talk a bit more in depth about that. So so the first question, why Mombasa? Why that particular area? Kilifi, sorry. Yeah.
There are quite a number of locations that had been identified, right? Along the coast, I think it was 5 locations from what I heard. And then you had the inland stuff in Lake Victoria, right? We have a huge body of water there in Lake Victoria. Then the other huge body of water we have is Turkana, right?
So it needs to be near a large body of water.
Yes.
Okay.
Of course, the designs that allow us to put it not really on a very large body of water, those cooling towers, when you think of nuclear, that thing that you normally see where it's like a hyperbolic structure and it's venting steam.
Yes.
So literally what that does is it does a lot of what if you have a nuclear plant next to the ocean would do. It's like a heat sink.
Okay.
Yeah. So the reason why why Kilifi was chosen is that out of these 5 sites that were at the coast, you had caveats. Population density is one, of course. So we can't really put it in Mombasa in the island. There's this metric called ground acceleration, which basically tells you in case there's an earthquake or a tremor, however low it is on the Richter scale, what's that going to look like? Because that's going to affect how we build our plant. It's going to make it a lot more expensive. If you build your plant somewhere that has
structurally sound. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So Uyombo, where it's been proposed, was the final decision. Of course, there's a lot that needs to happen. The people there have to accept it. It's not going to be imposed on them. And people normally raise this issue that there's a sort of marine park close by and you have protected species there.
Yes.
But then you were in Cape Town a while back, and about 20 kilometers north of the city center, there's been a plant there that's been running for, since I think they commissioned it in the 80s.
I didn't know that. I didn't.
Yeah, Quebag. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. South Africans don't come for me.
Yeah,
it's Quebag. It's literally set in the middle of a conservation park, 3,000 hectares.
How powerful? How many kilowatts, megawatts does it generate?
About 2,000 megawatts, which is literally 2/3 of what we have here. Right? That's awesome, eh? And one of the talking points that these guys at the coast, which is very genuine actually, because it's happened so many times where guys come and tell people there that, allow us to mine. It's going to create a lot of jobs for you guys. And then guys believe it. And then it's time for people to be given jobs and guys come from outside.
Yeah.
The Omondis. So that's the situation at the coast.
Now, okay. where did this whole before we talk about Chernobyl and stuff, I think you've brought on points that I genuinely have questions about. So where did this whole nuclear energy conversation start off from for Kenya specifically? Right? And if we're talking about benefits, let's say about it in terms of the cost, what would it cost to set up a plant like that? And versus how much power we can generate?
Yeah, so I was actually quite surprised. One of my, I don't know whether to call him a mentor, but I think a mentor is the correct, because I learned so much from him. He's not aware that I'm learning so much from him, but I do. Yeah, so Dr. Otoma was mentioning that as far back as 1986, we had discussions happening with the Germans about importing one of their technologies, but we didn't really commit. Commitment, political commitment, and actually doing work on the ground is very, very important for a nuclear project, especially if you're going to fund it using public funds.
Right.
Like, it's one of those things that if you decide you're going for it, and then halfway there's a change and people say, no, don't want to do it. Dude, you're losing like 5 billion USD down the drain. It's unacceptable.
So from the public, what you're saying is from the public sector, there was, from the 80s, an early notion to adapt nuclear energy for Kenya.
Yeah. We'd already started talking about it, and it sort of fizzled off. But then the specific time, which I think it's relevant for me to talk about, was when we had one of the big shots in Korea, who was an advisor to Kibaki.
Yes,
Dr. Kun Mo-chung is like the real deal. The real deal. He's this very respected person in South Korea. I don't know, now he's like 90 years old.
Wow.
He's been doing quite a lot. So he was one of Kibaki's advisors. And from what Otoma was telling me is that there's a time when they were just having a conversation about Kenya Vision 2030 and the things that need to happen in order to transform that dream into reality. And the conversation mentioned nuclear. And so we've been having quite a number of specifically personnel training in Korea. A significant, if you go there to Nopea and you look at the technical stuff, practically all of them have been to Korea. But the pace at which we've been trying to do this has been, to be truly honest, pathetic.
It's just been going in circles.
Yes, to be truly honest. I know people are not going to like me for saying this, but it has to be said. If you compare the UAE, when they made the decision they're going to go for a nuclear plant, and you compare it to us Africans, I'm not even going to limit it to Kenyans, Africans, we're dragging our feet. Like, purely in terms of milestones, which is something that has been sold to us by the International Atomic Energy Agency, that we need to follow milestones to get our reactor, that you have to do this, and then you do this, and then you do this.
What are those milestones?
It's like 19 steps.
Like, what do those milestones look like?
Of course, there's the political decision, and then there's environmental studies. It's like 19 units, but I've never looked at them because I'm not really a policy person. I just want to know, when do we have our reactor? Yeah. So if you look at it carefully, no country has managed to deliver a nuclear project following these milestones.
Really?
None of them. Like the UAE, when they wanted the nuclear power plant, they basically held an Olympiad, which is the equivalent of an Olympiad. They basically just told nuclear power construction companies from all over the place, be they government-led or private, come and convince us that you're the guys who we should give this project 20 billion USD to deliver a nuclear plant. And the Koreans submitted a bid, the Americans did it, the French did it. And the UA guys were like, yep, it's the Koreans. And they're able to build 4 units in just fewer than 10 years, which is unbelievable when you consider a place like Britain. Britain, they've been building a reactor, a French design, where you have to only transport stuff across that English channel. Is it like 16 or 17 years? And they're still not done. They're still not done. Like they've spent, initially the plant was supposed to cost, I think, like 6 billion euros or something. Dude, it's 42 right now. And then I'm going to dunk on these guys because, to be totally honest, you guys can't build a nuclear plant. You have to get people outside. You can't even deliver it on schedule. But then you tell me not to come work there. You're like, feel sweet. They did that to me, actually.
Really?
I've applied for so many times to go for EDF. EDF has basically 2 places where they operate, 3 places.
EDF stands for?
It's a French company. The words are in French and I don't know French. Okay. So they have 3 options. There's the Chinese, Taishan. They have an EPR reactor, a French designed by EDF and Framatome and those French companies. So that plant, when it was being constructed in China, so far away from France, they're able to deliver it on time and within schedule. When the French, these Europeans, tried to build the same reactor, one in Finland, the other one there in their own country, in Flamerville, just across the English Channel, and in Hinkley Point in Britain. All those projects were over budget and behind on schedule. It doesn't make any sense, right? But when they see a random Kenyan applying for a job, they feel sweet.
So I mean, okay, one in terms of let's look at Kenya. Back to Kenya. What would the cost be to set up a nuclear power plant here?
I think I see a number being thrown around for having like a 1 gig reactor, about in the ballpark of 5 billion USD, like 6 billion USD. The SGR costs a lot more, right? But I've been seeing very mixed commitments from their people, because believe it or not, I'm not part of NUPEA. I'm not working for NUPEA.
Okay.
I've been seeing them talking about SMRs, which is small modular reactors, which are these tiny reactors that have like a cap of about 300 megawatts. So practically everything in between is considered an SMR. So initially they're talking about an SMR, us having an SMR, and they had like timelines. But then you could tell that that's not going to happen because of the economics of it, of having an SMR. So recently I've seen they've gone back to
I'm assuming it's quite expensive, and then the power generation you have, 300 megawatts is not that much.
Yeah, it's not that much. And also the fact that, so the economics of SMRs and these tiny reactors is that the more you build them, the cheaper they're going to get. You're sort of harnessing into mass production.
Right.
I don't know if there's that, I don't know if you're aware of it. There's this curve of the mass production curve, where it's literally, you have a cost. If you have like a graph and you're starting from zero, the cost literally is going to fall until a certain point when it's going to be economical. Okay. And economical here, I mean, if you compare it to other technologies. Because, you know, like in Africa, in most of our countries, the competition for nuclear is not going to be the same as it is in the West. The West, they normally have this whole conventional nuclear power plant, 1 gig versus 300 gig. Like that's usually the conversation that happens. But in Africa and most of the developing world, that's not the conversation. The conversation is you have to compare SMR with the likes of coal and fossil fuels. And those things are that cheap.
Right.
So if you're saying that you're gonna be the first African country to deploy an SMR, you don't know what you're talking about, dude. Because it's gonna take a long time. It's gonna take even for just one design. I'll use the example of NuScale. There's a reactor called NuScale that the Kenyans used to like it quite a lot, until the company fired half of its workforce and realized there's a problem there. So NuScale, in order for NuScale to be able to compete,
that's a certain type of reactor.
Yes.
Okay.
So many of them are going to have to be manufactured. So many of them, and this is years, dude. Right? So in order for nuclear to have an economic case, at least the SMRs, I'm not talking about the conventional ones, in order to have us to have a conversation about nuclear with the language that makes economic sense, we have to couple it with something else. We have to say something like nuclear and desalination of seawater to supply water, or nuclear and hydrogen production, or nuclear and something else. But if it's just SMR alone, it's not going to make economic sense.
So let's say we do decide to go ahead and build a nuclear power plant.
1 gigawatt nuclear power plant.
1 gig nuclear power plant in an ideal scenario. How long would it take to get the infrastructure up and running? Let's say from today, if we decide, what's the time frame to get it?
When we're going to have like a nuclear plant up and running?
Yeah.
I think that's a very complex question, to be truly honest. I won't lie. The amount of groundwork that needs to happen before we can do it, that is after we've committed.
So ballpark years.
10 years, to be truly honest.
Fuck, that's a long time.
Yeah, to be truly honest, we have to be very conservative with it, because we're going to have people who have two options: to gamble with the nuclear power plant in the hope that after the nuclear power plant is built, once we're selling electricity for that cheap, we're going to have the guys who poured their money in there getting their money back and having interest.
Here's the problem that I foresee. How long are our presidential terms?
Exactly. I like your reasoning. Yes, it's like, let's say 5.
Yeah, even if they fucking get the 7-year shit out of the way. The problem is, let's say they commit to doing that.
Exactly.
7 years down the road, new government comes in and says, fuck you guys, we don't need anything to this. Project stalls.
Exactly.
Everyone's eating the money. And the problem in Kenya is it's just an obvious fact that when you're doing something with public sector, there is going to be a lot of funds and allocations
diverted to branches.
Exactly my point. But let's say we bypass all that. The government basically finds religion. We all buy the books. 7-10 years down the line, we have a nuclear power plant. The benefits to Kenyans What will that be?
Yeah, up until recently, most of the benefits that were being given were very generic talking points that people like me, I don't really care about those generic talking points because they were like, I don't know, sparring development, those talk phrases that really make sense when someone is on top of a vehicle talking to a crowd, but doesn't really make sense in a lab, right? So now there's a very discrete, very quantifiable price tag and benefit, which is the data centers. Data centers.
No, for sure. I think for data centers, what happens is, and maybe to add on to your point, as the world goes online, from your Safaricom M-Pesa app to your Netflixes to your ERP systems, what happens is on cloud actually means hosted in a data center somewhere. And I think the quantity at the back end is the physical infrastructure of data centers need to be there, but they need power.
Exactly.
And what's happening is in America, guys like Amazon, guys like the SpaceX guys, just these large OTTs and cloud players are reserving power in advance. They're building hundreds and hundreds of megawatts, and we don't have that capability yet. And once like each person goes to a digital place where they're consuming more and more data, it's just a matter of time before we scale. So I'm assuming nuclear then will support cheaper power and easily accessible power.
Exactly. So it's like the change that has happened specifically in the last 2 years, the narratives. Silicon Valley is full of hippies, right?
Yeah.
These guys were, I want to go to Burning Man, and I don't want to go using public transport because public transport is fossil fuel.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take my Tesla there because I care about the environment. But then they were presented with a very practical aspect. Regenerative AI needs vast amounts of infrastructure that is powered consistently 24/7. We don't care about, and now you start eliminating all this, Google campus has solar panels. We're not going to have a solar panel powered data center. It's not going to happen. We want to get wings. It's not going to happen. So they went down the list, eliminating everything, and they looked at this nuclear that they've been very opposed for it.
Yeah.
And they saw that this has to be the option. So for us, Kenya...
because solar plants, you need acres and acres and acres of land in order to generate similar power to what maybe a nuclear power plant could do. Right?
And also, you only have to do it, you can only do it during the day, right? At night, there's no...
True.
Unless you talk about storage. And then now you start seeing...
Speaking of which, have you heard about that company now that has satellites and LEOs on the orbit where basically they can now give you sunshine anywhere on the Earth?
What?
So yeah, they basically have these satellites that have large mirrors. And so what happens is you then give them coordinates on this piece of land, let's say Naivasha or somewhere where you have... They then basically adjust their satellites, wire the mirror to face the sun, and then you get it. So,
good. Like, why?
Technology.
Why?
That's insane.
But
right?
why?
But but think about that. Imagine you never lose sunlight, right? For solar power, solar plants, farming, and so on and so forth. Anyway, that's off on a different tangent. For the normal Mwananchi, the guy who's paying too much at KPLC and so on and so forth, will that reduce his bills? Will that reduce his power cost if we do get a nuclear power plant?
Yes, of course, it's gonna reduce the bills quite a lot because, of course, if it's public funded, it means that there's a sort of fixed amount that we more or less borrowed, and there's interest to be paid on it.
Yeah.
So once you've covered those costs, and it usually takes around 15 to 20 years, you're practically producing electricity for free, right? Practically for free. So nuclear, at least with the perspective of, the development and everything with that language, it sort of makes sense long term. What I normally say is that I'm first of all an engineer before a nuclear engineer, right? So I have to be very pragmatic and very concise in how I diagnose problems and fix them. If today, Samburu dude is fed up with his kids using Koroboi lamps to do the homework and wants tomorrow to have lights in the house, of course, it's not going to be a nuclear plant. It's going to be solar with storage. But if you're talking about 15, 20 years, 30 years down the line, we have more than enough time to talk about nuclear. The thing is, there's this levelized cost of electricity function that governs a lot of the investment in energy all over the world. And it varies quite a lot what the priorities are. Right now, as we speak, this least cost of electricity, the sort of function, the sort of input you have to put in it for technologies to make sense, it's very skewed in Kenya. It's very skewed. Like you see, for example, that wind project that was done in Turkana.
Yeah.
You look at the function and the things they were considering to set it up, and it doesn't make sense.
So here's the thing I've heard about wind. Sorry to cut you short.
Okay, yeah.
Is that they're not a cost saver. In fact, they cost more over time.
Exactly.
What they do is, first of all, if you go below any wind, what do you call them?
Windmills or wind...
the windmills.
Yes.
Have you seen what it does for the ecological system? Have you seen how many birds are dead
Dude,
under it?
Exactly, dude.
Hundreds and hundreds of birds have been killed.
These guys set up this plant literally in the migration corridor of the flamingos.
Changes. Because there's so many dead plants. On top of that, the maintenance and repair costs of those wind farms are hundreds of millions. And then and you need to, first of all, they rust. Over time, they need to be replaced. The cost of getting them in. And then you can't just dispose of them. There's a certain way you have to get rid of them. So why is it such a popular option?
Who made the call? That's the question. Because all these things are things that should have factored into this function, this least cost of electricity.
Yeah.
You should have had like, this is a variable, this is a variable, this is a variable, this is a constant. So if you look at it, it doesn't make any sense, dude. Because you even like, there's a very quantifiable thing that people don't normally talk about. So you've built this plant so far away from civilization in Turkana, in that sort of wind corridor. But most of the demand is in Nairobi. So you have to build like a high power grid from where the windmills are to what's the name of that station? Is it Suso or something? It's like a substation up there in North Rift. And dude, the price, the cost of building this high voltage grid, that, remember, you're not going to design it so that it's going to carry, 100 megawatts or something. You're going to design it so that it carries the maximum that the wind plant can generate, which is around 300. But then how many times are you generating 300 in this wind plant, right? That thing, capacity factor, we normally talk about.
Yeah.
They were advertising on their website, like Turkana thingy, and they even had it on a billboard. Like I was on my way home at that southern bypass sort of roundabout, and I saw like a billboard there, like Turkana wind, whatever, has a capacity factor of like 65. Dude, you know that meme, want to see wajinga? Literally. It didn't make any sense. The analogy I normally give is that imagine building an SGR from Nairobi to Kisumu, and then not only are you using it like once a day on the way back, the entire train that's going has only one passenger.
Oh man.
Literally. It's actually quite controversial, dude. Like the Danish, our Danish partners, it's an auto. Did you watch the Beast Wars cartoon when we were younger?
Beast Wars.
Literally, that's what's happening in Denmark concerning this. Literal Beast Wars. Guys are, who's to blame? That's the conversation they're having.
Fucking hell, man.
Kenya is on a renewable experiment thingy. We have like a bit of like a 10-year delay.
You know, the thing is, ultimately, our power has gone up quite significantly. So I remember from 12 cents to 13 cents per kilowatt hours. We're now at 19, and it's with new taxes proposed and new applications, it might go to 23. That means, first of all, data centers, forget about it. Your cost is going to go through the roof. But just even normal money, what you would spend with 1,000 bob on tokens, you're not going to get the same amount.
You're not.
And that then ties into the manufacturing plants. Cost of production, cost of food. Transport, everything gets affected, right? Because power is a stable part of it's a utility that we all require. And if nuclear is in a way a deterrent to that, then I don't see why we shouldn't go for it. Kim, I think he's got this bronchitis or asthmatic. So
how often do you guys go for medical checkups? Actually, this is something I'm really asking quite a number of my friends.
So here, for me, my issue is every time I travel for work, I get sick.
Okay.
And when I look at it analytically, the reason is, first of all, my lifestyle changes. You know, when you're at corporate events and you're whining and dining, there's a lot of, so there's less gym, and if we can say that way, there's basically a lot more having fun. So by the time you come back, your immune system's shot to shit. No working out, no this. So then, it's also you pick up, imagine you're on a plane, bro. One of the things that I hate flying. And like just it's a stark reminder of how poor I am.
Or you want to travel in a chartered jet or something, eh?
Yes.
But you're in the correct field, dude. Data centers gonna make a bit of money in the next couple of years.
Mbaya, lakini kama you're in first class, business class or economy, you're all staying through you're all standing at that immigration line.
Yeah.
You know?
It's the same petri dish, eh?
It's so fucked up, bro. It just reminds you how broke you are. Even if you're in business class, you're sharing your ass is on the same seat as 20 other passengers.
Yeah.
And then you have maybe there's another Omondi over there who comes.
Yes.
Omondi amekula, amejaza, and then he goes. By the way, here's a pro tip: always go and use the washrooms after the ladies. Because men, we spray and pray.
Yeah.
Ladies wanasafisha, wanafanya hii. So whenever I see a lady get up to go to the washroom, I go and wait behind her.
And wait outside.
Nikiingia ni safi. Like 10 out of 10 times, the ladies they're just, first of all, they take care of the place.
Yeah.
They clean it up, they do this, because they need to sit and do whatever.
Yeah.
If you
But
go,
dudes,
fucking hell.
You remind me of this meme I saw about the boarding schools. Okay, at least me, I'm sure you gonna the next style of boarding schools. I'm talking about the likes of Maseno School, where it's like I used to say you get these guys from random places of Kenya who during holidays they do go and do like cattle rustling.
Yes.
And like they're fishing using spears on Lake Victoria and all that. So it's like you get a very weird mix of people, but the one thing that connects them is untidiness. So you go into the dormitories and I don't know, Sijui nani was here. And me, Maseno, it was since 1906. You have like, I don't know, Barack Obama Senior was here. But then if you compare it to female, like the dormitories for females, they look a lot more cleaner.
It's much more cleaner.
Yeah.
Bro.
Sort of hardwired into our
DNA. So that's like a pro tip when you're traveling. Always use the washroom after ladies.
After the ladies, yeah.
Okay, so back to our nuclear energy. I think most of us have experienced Chernobyl through the eyes of Call of Duty. A lot of gamers have visited them.
Yeah.
What happened in Chernobyl? What went wrong? And how far has the technology evolved since then?
Yeah, Chernobyl was basically, I don't really think there was a lesson that was learned in terms of reactor physics and nuclear engineering and all that, to be so truly honest. The design of this sort of RBMK, it's a very specific reactor that was very common in the Soviet Union, and actually quite a number of them are still operating. Really? Can you imagine that specific design, RBMK? You still have quite a number of them operating.
Whereabouts are they in production? In
they're
operation?
not being produced. They're still like they were built before Chernobyl.
Sorry, in operation.
Yeah. Like right there, Chernobyl, Pripyat. There were 4 units there, and it's only one that went boom. The other 3 continued operating until 1999.
Really?
Yeah. Until 19. So the only reason they were shut down is because Ukrainians were told by the EU, in order for you guys to be allowed to join the EU in the future or whatever, close that thing down. So the obvious design flaw in Chernobyl was the fact that they didn't have a containment building. Most of the reactors around the world, the place where the fission happens, which is the reactor vessel, I'm not going to call it a pressure vessel, usually it's contained inside a containment, literally inside a containment.
Like a very strong structure.
Exactly.
So if something goes wrong, it can...
Yes. Literally, the purpose of this is to arrest any gaseous sort of radiological release. So you're going to have mainly cesium and iodine, depending on their half-lives. You're going to contain them here. Like, say, the core has melted, similar to what happened in Chernobyl. And you have this release of these noble gases that pose a significant risk to people. So you just contain them there inside the containment until they decay into something else that is a lot less harmful.
And how long does that take? It could take years, right?
No, dude. I think the need for cesium is like a couple of hours. Xenon, at least. I can talk about xenon.
Yeah. Because
I know that in the reactor, we are constantly producing xenon. And as time goes by, the xenon... it starts to affect the neutronics of it. Right. So the neutronics basically is what is going to determine how much electricity you're producing. Okay. If you have an agent like xenon, which is a neutron poison, basically it's absorbing neutrons. It means that if you are able to sustain a chain reaction with 3 neutrons and then one has been taken away, you're not going to be able to sustain fission. You have to wait until the xenon decays into something else, then you can. So literally that's what happened in Chernobyl actually. It was this xenon oscillations. What these guys did is that there was a test that was supposed to be run by the engineers, the electrical engineers. They're not even in the reactor, whatever. And it was a test that needed to be done that night because the reactor was not really running at full power. It was chini kiasi. But the guy in charge, I think you've seen the memes. I think he's Anatoly Dyatov or something. That very any guy, yeah. Not so good, not so great. That guy. So he was convinced by the engineers that they need to do that test that night, and he needed to do anything possible. Most of the procedures he did are against, like it's literally legislated at parliament level. Some of the steps he was taking have been outlawed at the parliament level.
Okay.
This guy turned off, first of all, the safety systems that were supposed to inject water or that were supposed to kill the neutron flux. Then he noticed that despite doing all this, he was trying to increase the power, but the power wasn't increasing because there was xenon in the core. So what he did was like to remove the rods, and I don't know, there was the culmination of it was that he ended up triggering this sort of positive feedback where he was trying to shut down the reactor by once he knew some things were going wrong. He tried to shut down the reactor by inserting the control rods into the core to absorb neutrons and kill the reaction. But unfortunately, for a design choice that, to be truly honest, until now amazes me, they had the graphite at the very tip of the control rods. So graphite is one of the best, they're called moderators. Moderation, so when fission happens, the neutrons that come out of fission are usually fast neutrons. They're called fast neutrons. They cannot interact with uranium in the way we want, whether it's enriched or not. They normally don't. So what we have to do as engineers is to design a system where we slow down the neutrons into thermal neutrons. Yeah. And the process of slowing down neutrons is called moderation. So you have quite a number of moderators out there. The most common one, of course, is usually water, because water is a collision between a neutron and a hydrogen atom. That's a very nice collision because their masses are more or less the same. You get. So let me just go a bit of a tangent here because this is very important. If I'm playing what's the name of it? Pool on a table, and I have like a bowling ball. If I hit this and it hits the bowling ball,
there's no effect.
There's no effect, right?
Yeah.
The speed remains more or less the same. The direction might change, but the speed is the same. Velocity might change, but the speed is the same. But if I have another bowling ball there, that's the same mass.
Size, yeah.
It's going to be a lot more efficient, right?
Yes.
You're going to slow it down a lot better. So that's the logic behind moderation. Moderation is we use a very low sort of mass atom to slow down our neutrons into thermal neutrons. So one of the best moderators is graphite. So this guy is, even the reactor itself, like you had the pressure tubes where the water was going in, taking out the heat to the whatever steam generator and everything. But the moderator was graphite. So now these guys are trying to insert control rods to kill the reaction, but at the very tip is graphite. You're doing the opposite thing. So it was the perfect storm, dude. And you had power escalation. Like within seconds, you had like figures that are next level in the thousands of megawatts when you're supposed to be 200. And it's a pressurized system. You've basically turned everything into a steam. There's a steam explosion ripped through the entire containment. There's this image in the Chernobyl series where one of the engineers look outside the control rods and they see the reactor hall. So each of those blocks that you see moving fanya hivi, those things like 1,000 tons each. Crazy.
That amount of basically pressure generated to move that stuff.
Exactly.
In terms of in terms of the effect felt, how widespread was it?
Dude, so Chernobyl, by the time the world was realizing something had gone wrong in Pripyat, it was like a week later. Tried to cover it up, but there's a nuclear plant. I've actually gone to it in Uppsala, Sweden, called Forsmark. So the engineers turn up in the morning for their shifts, and you have like detectors at the nuclear plant all over the place. It's standard procedure in most Western places. And guys are seeing the readings on the detectors.
Something's just off.
And they're like, what's going on? Guys are like, what's going on?
And how far was this between the Chernobyl incident?
Chernobyl. I think it's like 500 kilometers or something. I need to check. It was just across that Baltic Sea thingy.
Okay, so 500 kilometers away.
Yes.
They felt it at the same time as this was happening?
No. So that was a week after.
A week after.
So the plume, when this the core exploded, you had this release of radioactive gases, the xenon, the cesium, and all that. Even though the half-lives were short, the winds were a lot stronger. So most of the plume was diverted towards Scandinavia. That's why Akina Nani saw it. Some of it was diverted within the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
But then all of them were like there was a deliberate cover-up that was attempted by the Soviets, because it's very stupid stuff when you hear it. Like they were trying, if we say that this accident has happened, it's gonna have implications on the Cold War. Guys are gonna see, oh, these communist guys are not even responsible. So they tried to suppress it. By the time things were being advertised, the radiation had spread quite a lot. But we have to understand that most of these documentaries and series, for example, Chernobyl, which I'm discussing throughout the week with a couple of guys, there's a lot of exaggeration about what happened and the effect.
Huh?
Yeah. There's a lot of exaggeration. That's not to say that it wasn't a bad accident. We learned so many lessons from it, not only nuclear physics, but even disaster preparedness, like stocking iodine tablets so that your thyroid gets...
iodine tablets, huh?
Yeah, iodine. So you take the non-radioactive type so that when the radioactive type comes, you've already saturated your thyroid, so you don't inhale it or you eat it. You had like the village very close by, the town of Pripyat, that was supposed to, that most of the engineers lived in. It was evacuated.
I think tourists were allowed to visit the place, right?
Nowadays, they are.
Like you stay in your car though, and I think they take you through it. Is that the case?
Yeah, I know that. And also, I've seen that there's some people who actually go into the forest around without even that. Like, so one thing we have to understand is that Chernobyl happened so long ago, dude.
Right,
It's 1986.
right?
Yeah. That was before we were born, right? So through this time, a lot of the radioactivity, like the half-life for most of these radionuclides that were there, has passed a very long time.
Okay.
So all that remains are very random stuff. Of course, compared to the surroundings, the amount of radiation is significant.
Yeah.
But if you look at it compared to other places in the world, it's not that significant. If you compare it, there's a very famous town in Iran, Ramsala or something, where guys go and like they have like this beach where it has like black sort of sand. So guys normally go there for therapeutic, this pseudoscience thingy. Similar to the way guys to go to Olkaria, sleep in those geysers and all that. Yeah. So something, if you compare the radiation, the background radiation there compared to what's in Chernobyl, this is a lot more. You get.
Interesting.
There's a lot. Our radiophobia is so deep, man.
It
so
is.
Deep, yeah.
I will give that. I mean, it's part of our pop culture as well.
Yeah.
Call of Duty Zombies, it all came from that, right?
Yeah.
What about Fukushima? What happened there?
Fukushima was... so I'm going to say this, and I'm sure anyone who's going to watch this, they're going to really complain, Agar, why are you simplifying this stuff?
Yeah.
But the reason why we even have a Fukushima we're talking about had more to do with the arbitrary decisions by an engineering team to put diesel generators at for the 4 reactors there in the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant. The decision this guy made to put the diesel generators in the basement of a reactor. That's a single event.
So it gets flooded.
Exactly. So people normally say, oh, I don't know, these guys, they built people normally say, I don't know, they built a seawall. There's a seawall that is mandated because tsunamis happen quite a lot in Japan. So all their plants have a bit of a seawall. So these guys had designed a seawall that was 10 meters high.
Yeah.
Which, looking at historical data, they would expect that waves, any tsunami that was going to come, was going to be lower than that. The 10 meters was supposed to be enough. The tsunami that came for them was 20 meters. Once in 100,000 years, tsunami.
That's what happens is this just it takes that one incident for you to get screwed, right?
Exactly.
So then, so water comes in, generators.
Yeah. So what happened is that this design of these boiling water reactors in Fukushima, they relied on what is called active safety systems. So when you shut down the core, you've inserted the reactor, the control rods. They're more or less a poison. They are absorbing all neutrons. So there's no more fission happening. But you have decay heat, right? If you have a 1,000 megawatt nuclear plant and you shut it down and the power falls to the point where it's only 77%.
There's water there if you want.
Yeah? Thank you. Yeah. So you see, it's very good that you mentioned water because water is going to be very relevant in a couple of minutes. So you've shut down the reaction, but you have decay. You have radioactive decay that's going to happen despite that. You still have about 7% of 1,000 megawatts still being generated in the core. So you need to cool it. All this heat that is being generated after you've shut down the fission has to be evacuated there, taken somewhere else, vented into the atmosphere or through the steam generators and brought back. That loop has to be maintained
Right.
until the power we get to zero. So when you say 7%, people don't really understand the magnitude of that. What's 7% of 1,000 megawatts?
That's about 70.
That's a huge amount of heat, dude.
Yeah.
It's a huge amount of heat. So you have to have systems that are going to be able to evacuate 70 megawatts.
70 megawatts that's bigger than any data centers here.
It's huge.
That's huge.
So this design that these guys had with the boiling water reactors, it was supposed to rely on active systems that were driven by the generators. So basically, Fukushima, I always say this, Fukushima was less of a nuclear accident. There was nothing nuclear about the things that followed. It was more of an accident at a nuclear plant. Literally a blackout. We needed power to evacuate 70 megawatts from this reactor that would shut down. But the tsunami had flooded our generators, so we didn't have any way to do it. So what happened is all this heat was not being vented out. There's a very specific limit to what the cladding of the fuel can sustain zirconium. Once it goes above a certain limit, you have reactions now happening. It's not even radioactive, the reactions that are happening. It's literally zirconium, which is a metal at elevated temperatures, interacting with water to produce hydrogen. So hydrogen is a very light element. It
Right.
migrates very easily inside the reactor. So what happened is that most of it accumulated in a corner room at the plant, very specific corner. You had a lot of hydrogen accumulating there. And hydrogen is very, very explosive in the presence of oxygen, literally a recombination to create water.
Yes.
So that very famous image of a mushroom cloud, you can imagine what that did to the Japanese, seeing a mushroom cloud hovering over a nuclear plant.
Psychologically, that must have messed them up.
Like you see it, and you don't do that you see that mushroom cloud over there. Is that a hydrogen mushroom cloud or is it from a nuclear? Dude, you don't have that time. It's Japan. Guys are gonna evacuate, and the government is gonna. There's a lot of information going around. Hii imefanyika, and then you see the mushroom cloud over there in the nuclear plant. Guys panicked
Casualties?
from that hydrogen explosion. Funny enough, it's zero.
What?
Yeah, it's zero. So the crazy thing about Fukushima, I normally hear people, and I'm a bit of I'm becoming a grown up. I'm supposed to be a responsible member of society, so I'm not supposed to troll. I used to troll people quite a lot. That we have very, in retrospect, the people who are running away from the nuclear plant were sort of irrational, right now. They're irrational. But then if you look at the situation about that time, it's a mushroom cloud at a nuclear plant, and I don't care if it's zero people and the safety features are working or whatever. I'm going to get out. But Fukushima did more to prove how safe nuclear reactors are than the opposite. These 20,000 people that you normally hear people talking about, they didn't die from the events at Fukushima nuclear plant. They didn't die from that. They died from the tsunami. The random 1,200 that I normally ascribed to the evacuation, because the evacuation was crazy, dude. You had guys hooked up to life support system in hospitals being told that you see whatever it is, us risking your life, moving you from this ICU to another place is a lot better than whatever is going to happen once that mushroom cloud over there. Like, it was so bad, and there's a lot of psychology mixed in. You had 1,200 people dying exclusively because of those evacuations. Not from the tsunami, but from the evacuations.
So not directly, but indirectly.
Yes.
Okay.
That phobia did that. And this introduces a bit of a question. So the Soviet guys, when Chernobyl happened, they tried to suppress it. Right? The total number of casualties from everything that happened, I think right now it's like at 120, Chernobyl, only 120 guys passed
120?
away. Only 120. And most of them were the initial responders.
After effects of the nuclear disaster, is cancer more prevalent? Do your kids get it? Genetic disorders,
The cyclopean eyes and the three tits.
Yes, exactly. In that order.
Yeah, so the good thing is that we've had quite a lot of data. Most of it wasn't collected in... it's basically using human beings as lab rats, to be totally honest. The guys who were exposed to radiation during the Hiroshima and Nagasaki explosion, those guys have been followed throughout their lives, and we have a lot of data from human exposure to radiation. It's called the Bear Reports. They're easily available online. You can be able to look at it.
But this one in Fukushima, there was no radiation.
Some radiation was released, of course,
Okay.
because the containment was breached by the explosion, the hydrogen explosion.
So did
So in Chernobyl specifically, I think the best people to check, the best population to look at about these effects, because like carcinogenesis usually has like a 25-year latency period,
right?
where you're exposed to radiation at point A, and then 20 years later, we're supposed to see something in the population.
Yes.
So these 1,200 people, I told you about the 1,200 people who refused to move. You don't see those cancers. You don't see those cancers. Those are, it's called UNSCARE, which is the United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation. I'm so proud that finally I can say it in online. So these guys, they made very dire predictions about it. They were using what is essentially pseudoscience that won someone a Nobel Prize. I'll tell you about it. They're using it to predict the number of cancers, the number of casualties that would be incurred by the population in Pripyat and the former Soviets. But we haven't seen it. They were focusing on something that's called the LNT that guides. It's the thing that has made nuclear so expensive.
Okay.
So this linear LNT was the person who made it was someone called Hermann Muller. And he based this linear and threshold model of atomic radiation on just a single experiment. He was exposing fruit flies to radiation and plotting it on a graph. How much radiation do I need to expose fruit flies to before we see any effect? So I sort of understand part of the curve. It's a very famous curve. I don't know if you're going to be able to edit it into the discussion, where it's a line through the origin. So there's a threshold where if you go over, you're going to see very discrete. You can make statements like the more radiation you're exposed to, the more harm is done to you. But funny enough, upper chini, between 50 millisieverts being the unit we use to measure radiation doses. If you look at it between 50 millisieverts, and some people have even told that this thing goes all the way to 70 and 100, that's a discussion that's being had. It's not a straight line through the origin. It's not, there's so many, like there's no data that backs this line. This guy literally did. Do you remember that extrapolation thing we used to do in high school? Where on a table, you have an X value, and then you have a Y value. Where unafanya X times 10 is equals to 20X.
Correct.
X times 20. So it's like a linear up. Then because ukufanya X times 5, X times 5 is lower than X times 5 times 10. It's lower. You assume that it's just a straight line. Because ukujuu ya 10 to 20, it's a straight line. You assume, but that's not the case, dude. Literally, all safety engineering and design of a lot of radiation, including even X-ray use and all this other whatever, it's based on this thing. And it's 100% pseudoscience. Because it doesn't take into account the human ability to heal itself below this specific threshold. Literally that. So this guy won the Nobel Prize, dude. By the time he was winning it, people knew that this is messed up. But then you had a bit of an intervention from the oil lobby. Yeah. So the statement that normally comes from it is, it's easier to fool people than it is to convince them they've been fooled. Like, I'm very lucky that this is a discussion that was introduced to me while I was in Korea for my undergraduate. Those guys have their own perception of radiation.
In fact, maybe we can talk about that, because I was exposed to the Nuclear Society of Kenya, which you're part of. But you also mentioned that you studied. You're a nuclear physicist. Maybe if you could just give me your experience, like how did that come about? You know, because it's a very unique career.
Yeah. Random.
How many nuclear physicists do you know in Kenya? One.
Yeah.
How did that come to be?
Yeah, so I'd sort of dropped out of uni to play League of Legends in my room for a couple of months when a couple of my friends, one specific dude who I owed 2 Gs, he was like, when there's a couple of dudes at a hotel in River Road. Yeah. Literally. And they're hosting like a math Olympiad. And if you go there, that 2 Gs, you don't have to give me the 2 Gs.
Really, yeah?
And I was like, dude, man, I'm having like a countdown in the lobby. This thing's about to open. I go hit those crazy South Africans who are talking shit about us on social media that Kenyans can't game. But okay, this 2 Gs. You're 21, you're 22.
Yeah.
You've dropped out. You're just in your room. You have a lot of food in the fridge and the snacks, and you have your modem. Back in the day, we didn't really have you have your modem. And okay, I'm gonna go. And then these guys give us like a Olympiad. I'm lucky that I was majoring in something electrical engineering, basically,
Right.
at University of Nairobi, and the thing was fresh in my mind. So I do the Olympiad. I match the best, and those guys go away. They have my email, and then literally 28th of February, they send me so 28th of February is literally my birthday. Yeah? I wake up and I see there's a random text there from KAIST. It's congratulations, you've been admitted to KAIST. That's when I checked what is KAIST, Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology. I checked online.
So you
And
must
it's
have
top
been
50, dude. It's top 50 university.
you must have been very good at math
Dude, like
because it's a math Olympiad, yeah.
if it was someone else who had dropped out of the electrical engineering class, they would have, it was trivial stuff. Like if you see the questions I answered to get a scholarship at a university in the top 50, it's outrageous, to be totally honest.
Interesting.
It's
I think only a
outrageous.
smart person would say that.
No, trust me. It's
Maths is
no,
hard.
no. Any of the people who are my classmates at UN
Yeah.
for electrical engineering, any of those guys go on to that Nini and River Road, because so there's so many, like how can I put it, like very weird things. So number one, why are these Koreans from a university? I thought it was a scam. Where have they gone to a hotel in River Road? You know what happens in River Road? It's like ground zero of scamming in East Africa. Eh? People think it's Kenya. It's not. People talk about Luthuli. Those guys haven't gone to River Road and seen what's up there. Those guys haven't gone there. Any of these guys, had they done the exam, they would have been able to get in. If you look at the things that Koreans have to go through, or even the Ethiopians, because I joined with a couple of Ethiopians. One of them was telling me he was like the top student in their country. I wasn't the top student in Kenya when I did my KCSE. Like I did well, but I wasn't the top.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. If you dude, it was very whatever. So I decided to do nuclear. We had this course. So the first year of nuclear engineering, not really nuclear engineering, the first year at KAIST is very similar to MIT. So what
KAIST
they
is
do,
based in South Korea, right?
yes.
Okay.
Their mission is to train people to get PhDs by the time they're 26.
Right.
That's their model.
So how old were you when you went there?
I was 22. There was no way I was going to get a PhD at that time. Because most of these Koreans who go there are, you've heard of these science academies, eh?
Yeah.
Literally, eh? The real deal. And if you want to know the real deal, I don't know if that footage is around. I wish there's footage around about the midterm of my very first year in Korea, where I was sitting with these kids and we were doing the same exam. Trauma.
Really?
Dude. Calculus. I'm not even going to talk about physics. I'm going to talk about physics later because I basically slept through the exam. It's not a good metric to just explain how bad things were. So it's a calculus exam and it's 10 pages, 10 questions, only 10 questions. You're supposed to answer them in 3 hours. Okay, I'm a random black dude in the room. I'm supposed to be good in math. Like the reason why I went to electrical was because I had the option of doing med, but I hate the sight of blood. I absolutely hate it. So I didn't want to do it. So I went electrical. So mimi nimejipiga kifua hapo. Hey, you're going to see this Kenyan thingy. Dude, I basically reinforced this notion that black people don't know math. Because these kids from Korea Science Academy, these guys are finishing the whole paper in 10 minutes, dude.
What?
It's a 3-hour exam. And you know what that does to your psychology? So it's called Chungan Kosa, which literally means mid-challenge. Chungan Kosa. There's a final challenge called Kimal Kosa, which is a final exam. But this whole week, it's exams. Midterm.
And were they teaching you in English or?
Yeah, it was in English. Everything was in English at KAIST. So day one was calculus. And mixed in the international guys, the international students, you have these kids from the stans, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, especially Kazakhstan, dude, the girls from Kazakhstan at a next level. And you had even Pakistan had some big shots, and Tajikistan, those weird Soviet. And you would get kids there. They didn't go through Science Academy in Korea, but these guys won gold medal at the International Math Olympiad. Medalists. So in the math calculus 1 course, all these guys are gonna leave in 30 minutes. Everyone's gonna leave. I was the only dude remaining in the room doing that exam. It took me the 3 hours. Still got a D. So that's happened for calculus. So that very day one, it had traumatized me, seeing guys leaving, right? And you had the Kazakhstan guys and whatever. Day 2, it's like chemistry. And same thing, you have guys in here, they're different from the guys who did the calculus and won the Olympiad. Now the guys who did chemistry Olympiad and the world gold medal. So these guys are also gonna leave. So each of these exams, you had people who are leaving early. But the one consistent thing was there's a black dude who wasn't left early in any of these exams, dude. So I panicked when it was physics.
So it was
same
a
for
completely
physics.
different level then, right?
Next level. So for physics, I said, no, dude, I'm going to also leave the first guy. This guy is watanijua. So I decided I've been taking caffeine pills for quite a while. I decided to transnight. Caffeine pills. Like it's a pill,
yes.
but it's like 200 milligrams. It really wakes you up. So I decided to do something I'd never done in my life, even in high school. Transniting. So I took like 400 milligrams. Those are two pills. I think I took the first one at 9 when I went to this library at KAIST undergraduate uni where people just go to study. They call it a library, but it's not a library. It's like the most depressing place you ever. So I went there. I'm going to transnight. I took a pill at 9. I think I studied up until around 2. And then I took a second one. Studied all the way around 6. When it was time to go for the exam, around 9, I forgot to take my caffeine pill. I was sleeping during the physics exam.
Jesus Christ.
I was sleeping, dude. That first year was torture. So I only did well in one exam at the end of the year, which is the capstone, where we were presented a challenge to design an electricity solution for a town. And that's when I discovered the potential that nuclear has.
So then you decided to transition now fully into nuclear.
Yes.
And so how long were you at KAIST for?
I was there for 4 years.
How's your Korean?
It's pretty good, I think. Okay, back then it was good. There's this funny thing I normally say where I stepped off the plane in Incheon, in Seoul, and someone asked me, "Annyeong hashim nika," which means, "How are you well?" But me, I wasn't paying to the Annyeong hashi. I was only paying attention to the nika.
Okay.
So I've stepped into this new country. My mom has warned me when I'm leaving. My mom is crying, "Oh, my son." My dad is like, "This guy is gonna whatever." And then at Incheon, stepping off the train, and I'm hearing nika, 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 nika.
And so you think that people are calling you the N-word?
Yeah. It happened, but Korea is not racist, if you ask me.
But did you have any racial did you have something like?
Of course. I would say it's very different racism from what you would see in Sweden, for example. In Sweden, they're naturally, first of all, not really friendly, the Scandinavians.
Yeah.
They're very stoic.
Yeah.
Wako too. They can't be bothered. Those guys can't be bothered.
So is it racism due to lack of exposure in Korea? Where
it's not even racism, if you ask me, dude. It's like
if you take a Mzungu to a village in Nairobi.
Exactly. Guys are gonna follow.
Because they've never seen anything like that, right?
I think the craziness in it is I would hear like these Koreans, especially the dudes, calling me Hook Hyung. So Hyung literally means elder brother, and Hook means black, right? So black elder brother. It's an endearing term. They're not doing it in a way that Nini. But then I came to learn the origins of Hook Hyung, and there's a bit of porn involved, dude.
Really?
Yeah. There's a bit of porn involved. Specifically, I think it's called Wesley Pipes. So please don't be worried that I know the name of porn stars. I know this specific one.
Do you know Wesley Pipes?
Wesley Pipes.
Don't search him up, right?
Don't Google it. If you're ever streaming something you're doing and then maybe I should Google. Don't Google it on stream. You won't like what you see and the audience won't like it. You'll attract a totally different audience than you expect. Eh?
So you're being compared to Wesley Pipes.
So these guys are comparing me to Wesley Pipes, dude. When I learned that thing, I started refusing. I don't want you to call me Hook Hyung. Because number one, you're dudes. Like, I don't mind if it's girls calling me. So they're not going to call me Hook Hyung. They're going to call me Oppa, I think. Oppa, yeah, they're going to call me. Maybe Hook Oppa. I don't mind. Because you're girls, right?
Yeah.
I don't mind at all. But dude, why are we in the showers after playing rugby, naked, showering? And then you're calling me Hook Hyung. Why are you doing this?
I think because now when you're showering, that makes sense.
No, I don't want it.
Because you're Wesley Pipes as well. Why?
No. I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want to be Hook Hyung.
It's after walingi kwa shower waliona wait. In the nuclear reactor.
Dude, there's one specific case that
Look,
happened.
bro, this is what happened. You went in the shower. Everyone's naked, everyone's in the shower. And then they turn, they look at Agar, and then they look down and then they look back at you. Okay. And that's when that nickname came.
I don't want it.
Maybe that's why you studied nuclear reactors, because you're carrying a nuclear reactor dick as well.
A weapon of mass
destruction.
There's a very bad gay
See,
joke
me-
I can make there.
Is the rumor in a non-gay way? Is the rumor true that Asians are cut short?
Not really, to be totally honest. I don't have enough data.
Those gym showers were not enough collection of data
I
points.
can't make a blanket statement. I've done the experiment.
But clearly, you were the
don't
biggest
have
in the
the-
room.
What I can say is that some of them were small modular reactors, while there was an EPR.
Some were Kubota generators. You were
like,
full on.
like EPR is like 1600 megawatts. Eh?
Wee.
Let's talk about something else. Then.
Omondi.
I think this is a sort of testament of how comfortable we are about our sexuality, right? Like
On the
Kenyan dudes,
on the CoffeePump podcast.
yeah, like Kenyan dudes tend to be very, I don't know, you make like gay jokes and they're very on the edge about some of these things. So you just
In fact, now we're talking about on edge people. I think the Swedes were like that, right?
what do you mean?
You worked in Sweden for a while, so even
Yes.
them, you can't make a joke like that over there. I think culturally they're just very different. So you you graduate from KAIST. What you graduated?
So it's nuclear and quantum engineering.
Oh wow! So you're a nuclear and quantum engineer.
Yes.
And then after that, what happens? Like,
Yeah.
I know you worked in Europe for a while. You worked at some nuclear power plants before you decided to come back. What sort of happened after graduating and before coming back? That period. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I came back, dude. I didn't really come in the best of terms, to be honest. I came back with this bachelor's in nuclear and quantum engineering. I assumed that I was gonna be, the guys are gonna be falling all over me because I don't know, I'm the only one around.
Yeah.
And we're talking about we have a nuclear plant we wanna build, and then I've studied in Korea when we're exploring whether the Koreans can do it, right? So I assumed that it's gonna be smooth sailing. It wasn't. So to sort of sustain myself, hooked up with Beast.
Yes.
Yeah. And we had this sort of thing where we used to like host, LAN parties.
Gaming
LAN parties.
sessions.
We were basically competing with Pro Series. Are those guys still around? Pro Series
I think
gamers?
so. Yeah.
Yeah. We used to host like LAN parties at Galana Plaza.
I remember that. Yeah.
We did so many LAN parties, dude.
So
It was
how old were you? Like 25, 26 then?
27, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. So we did that for quite a while, dude. We did that for so many weeks. But then COVID happened. So the business model was very nuanced. We were like, our main source of income is not going to be these guys who are coming to pay 400 bob to play Call of Duty all night or other stuff. The main source of income was supposed to be from the corporates. We're supposed to show the corporates that as Rampage, we used to call it Rampage Esports, we are able to deliver. Because, gaming is a very elite thing in Kenya by Kenyan standards. These are guys who are rich. It's not even 0.1. It's 0.01, right? It's guys who are, they're literally top earners. If you're able to attract 100 of these guys, they can totally outspend, I don't know, the next 1,000 just below them, right? So the business model is that we're supposed to show this to these corporates, and they're supposed to bring in, like, I don't know, Lenovo says they want to display one of their gaming laptops. Liquid Telecom wants to show guys how much there's a little latency, stuff like that. And we were very consistent, dude. We were able to. There's a day I think you
were able to sustain yourself.
Yeah,
right?
more or less. The revenue wasn't really that whatever, but we always breaking even, kind of.
Right.
Yeah. That business model cannot survive something like COVID.
No,
It cannot.
because it's dependent on people coming in.
Yes. So that's
COVID happens, and then what? Because now you're back. This is gone. What's your next step then? I know you ended up in Europe. Back,
yes,
right?
yes. Yeah, there was. I like saying it like this, but I'm not saying it in any way to be arrogant or something. But the Europeans have a brain drain program for nuclear because their kids don't want to study nuclear engineering. Dude, other than France, you don't really have any other European country that has a bachelor's in nuclear engineering. Most of these guys who are graduating from these universities, with the exception of France, they are doing it at master's level. So someone like me whose foundation is nuclear engineering, it's rather attractive to them. So they gave me a scholarship. It's called the European Masters in Nuclear Engineering at KTH. So my undergraduate, most of my interaction with nuclear technology was, of course, there's the broad radiation, but then specifically nuclear power engineering was on one type of reactor, which is common in Korea. It's called a PR1400. It's water-cooled reactor. But when I went to Sweden, specifically, where I was now exposed to this exotic, I like calling them exotic because they are exotic. You have reactors that are cooled using metal, right? Lead. Can you imagine lead-cooled nuclear reactor?
That's insane.
And molten salt nuclear reactors and sodium-cooled nuclear reactors. Then I went to University Paris-Saclay, there's a very nice nuclear research center about 2 hours south of Paris. People don't like me saying Paris. They want me to say Paris, like a proper Luo guy. And I was there for a while at Einstein. It's a very nice...
So you went quite a few places, right? I mean...
Yeah, dude, I was all over the place.
How many years were you away?
3 years. Was it 3 years? Yeah, 3 years.
Did you do like a master's or a PhD in between that time? Or?
So I did a master's. I was supposed to start a PhD when I just got tired.
Master's,
I realized,
master's in?
Nuclear engineering still. So it's nuclear engineering. The PhD that I was supposed to finish was more on the exotic coolants. But dude, I don't want to study exotic coolants because I know Kenya, we're not going to build any.
Right.
This thing that people have where you want to go to Europe and stay, I don't want it. I do not want it. So everything I'm doing is bringing me back to Nairobi. Yeah. So I looked at doing 4 years of exotic coolants compared to where I want to be in 10 years with a family, for example. I don't want a pointy. Because I'm this stupid person where all the time. You know this thing where people normally are just on edge. And I see it so much with my friends who are female. They're just waiting for that, this is just another Luo guy who wants to marry a white girl so that he comes across as elitist. There's a village. There's a dude in the village where my dad grew up in who has this banners, these signages on the side of the road. I don't know, Nini Olympic, something school, PO box, Nini, and then a motto. So basically, this guy has put one of those things outside his gate, advertising that his dad was the first Kenyan to marry a white woman.
Really?
According to him, that's an achievement. I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be... Guys see me walking down the street with my wife and kids, and they're like, you don't ask him where he's from. This is another Luo dude. I don't want it.
Right.
That's how petty I am.
You want to maintain the genetic line.
Yeah, that one. And also, I was into a lot of Pan-Africanism when I was young. Like when I was in my early 20s. I was into that quite a lot. I was a student of Umar Johnson. I don't know if you've ever seen those videos. Go and see that meme. So this guy always rants about these guys who want to mix and dilute the... It's like Nazi for black people. You get? Literally, dude, if you hear that guy...
You want to maintain the genetic line.
Yeah, don't date outside your race. It's that guy.
Interesting.
I was very impressionable when I was like 21 years old. Because it's either games, League of Legends, where you get hammered by these Asians, and then when you go on YouTube, it's Umar Jackson telling you the way black people are supposed to marry. Yeah. So, it's in as much as I've discarded those things and adopted further, more reasonable points of view, there's still a bit of it there. I don't want to be the typical dude who prefers white women.
So then, basically, I guess what you're saying is you realize that your time in Europe is limited and you want to come back, you want to do something in Kenya.
Yes.
And how, when you came back, the Nuclear Society of Kenya, you were part of the formation of it. Maybe talk to me about how that came about.
I won't go into the full details because there's a bit of political...
What is it with fucking politics and everything?
Yeah, it's nuclear, dude.
Senor.
It's nuclear. It's always going to be politics. It's always going to be political. So I had a delegation of my professors from the time I was in Korea. One specific guy, Mansung Yim. Mansung Yim is literally like a father to me, to be totally honest. Like I remember my time in KAIST specifically, and I remember how the things he did specifically for me. So these guys, they visited. It was him. He was vice president at KAIST of International Affairs. There was the chairman of the Korea and Nuclear Society, and then there was vice president of KERI. KERI is like the Oak Ridge National Lab of Korea. If they're ever going to build a nuclear bomb, which is... Okay. So they're guys, it's very bright guys in nuclear. So these guys visited and they were meeting politicians and all that. And at the end of the tour, me and a couple of my friends, we're just friends. We don't really work together. We're just people who study in Korea, different levels. We were like, dude, we need a professional society. We need our point of interaction to be a professional society. So we registered it. We have it up and running. We have webinars similar to what we're going to have tonight.
What do you guys do within the Nuclear Society of Kenya?
Right now, it's a very young organization.
Okay.
We applied for registration last year in November. We only get the registration certificate was it June or July? I I think it was June, because it was before the Gen Z thingy.
Yeah.
So now he's just setting up the structures, right?
Right. And it's specifically tailored to governing the nuclear actions in Kenya.
We're basically complementing it.
Okay.
We're introducing a very pragmatic, very professional dimension to everything, because up until now it's been very kind of political.
Rudimentary, right? Okay. Makes sense. And so how are things with that now? I think since the last time we spoke, you mentioned some things have changed.
So yes, so we have so many things. We're supposed to be working on a World Nuclear Day. It's supposed to be 2nd of December. It basically commemorates there's something called fast criticality of a nuclear plant. You finished building a nuclear plant, you normally have your fast chain reaction. It's called fast criticality. So about 82 years ago, as a species, we achieved the fast criticality of the very first nuclear reactor. It wasn't really to create power. It was more to prove a concept that it's possible to use a sustained nuclear reaction for power generation. It's Enrico Fermi, very interesting guy. He died age 39 of lung cancer. But what he did is that he built a nuclear reactor under the Squash Court, University of Chicago. So literally in the basement, he had a reactor there. Graphite cooled, moderated. Remember we talk about graphite being a nice. So the crazy thing about this is that having control rods on all reactors is always an option. Nowadays it's automatic, but that very first one wasn't automatic. It was a dude. It was a dude who there's a rope that was tied to whatever, and it was inserted into the core, and literally those control rods were there, and it was supposed to be controlled by this guy who had an axe. Should anything had gone wrong, he was supposed to cut the cable, and then the controllers were supposed to be inserted into where the was happening, the fission, so that the reaction is stopped. So the funny thing, for a very long time, I didn't know what scramming the reactor meant. Scram, you got to scram the reactor. Let's scram the reactor. Basically, shut it down. What it means is that, so scram is an abbreviation. It's not a word. It's safety, control, rod, axeman. Safety, control, rod, axeman. Scram. If you look at the first letter of each. So scram the reactor, literally, it's a dude with a... Nowadays, we do it automatically where you have sensors, they whatever, and then it falls. But yeah, there was a dude. That can go wrong in very many ways, right? A graduate student. Students are the slaves of academia.
That's true. I mean, they're trialing everything in first person, yeah?
Yeah.
So what are your future ambitions now, bro? EDM festivals?
I hope so. I'm a huge fan of dubstep. I've been listening to it. The thing is, I'm starting to realize that I'm old as hell.
How old are you?
34.
You're 90 born.
90, yeah.
You're not old. Don't say you're old. You're making me feel old.
So you're also 34. Oh, so you're in denial.
91, bro.
This guy's in denial. Dude, we're old as hell. The thing is, I showed one of these...
Am I old?
Old as fuck. I think that's the word.
Wait. We're not old, eh?
So there's this thing that happened recently where I found myself on TikTok. I don't know what I was looking for there. And I had guys, this mosh pits. You remember back in the day, mosh pits were specifically for rock. Right? It was more of rock.
Yes,
guys have
crazy
pits,
guys in a circle.
Yeah. And guys were listing songs that would be nice to, you have a mosh pit there, which would be nice. And then I had a mistake of putting in there, there's this Skrillex and Damian Marley sort of crossover thingy. You remember it? Where the video is this American Indian guy and he's being evicted, and then he does a dance and rain starts falling. It's like a crossover between raga and dubstep. It was a Skrillex, one of the very first Skrillex whatevers. And then guys are commenting under there and they're like, who the hell is Skrillex? We're old as hell.
Speak for yourself. No, but it's true, man. It's fuck. Those times have definitely gone by. I was just thinking about the other day is, playing Halo multiplayer screen with 4 controllers. Remember how fun that used to be? And now, let's play online.
It's so medieval, right? If someone finds you, my brother finds me playing something I don't know, Call of Duty or something, split screen with someone, or an FS. You remember NFS?
Yeah.
Back in the day when literally, so you're the top, whatever your views, and then we're old.
Bro. Maybe I'm old.
Embrace it. The only reason I have a hat is I have a receding hairline.
Really?
Yeah. I'm not going to show it. I'm going to lose 1,000 aura points. If you guys discover have a receding
But
airline.
you know, by the way, for guys that don't know who have watched till this end, this is actually our second attempt at doing this.
Yeah.
The first attempt, I actually thoroughly enjoyed the conversation,
Yeah.
but the sound quality was not the best.
Hmm.
Maybe I'll just publish that as a by the way.
So that guys can compare it.
Compare it. What do you think? Should we just release it
That's good, I think.
and say this is?
It's a very different conversation, kind of, right?
Anyway, if you guys really want to see that, just leave one comment or two comments here saying release the original podcast, and we'll do that. Otherwise, we're just being here. You know,
Yeah.
maybe if someone comments and says release the video, then we'll post it up.
Sure. Personally, I don't mind.
I know we're cutting it thin. You've got
2 minutes.
he's got nuclear society.
No, it's not really a class. It's more personal, where I have like youngsters who are students and young professionals. They look at Chernobyl from 2019 and then they critique it. So
Okay.
I want them to be like, imagine if you had a room full of experts in nuclear
Yes.
critiquing Chernobyl.
Okay, so you
But I want it from the
educating from a
perspective.
young age.
Yes. So they spend like 50
nice.
minutes discussing among themselves,
Yeah.
episode by episode. So on Monday we had episode 1, Tuesday episode 2, today's Wednesday episode 3, and then the last 10 minutes I have the experts coming in, guys in electronics and electrical design like me, and other people health. So we discussed Chernobyl accident.
Guys, this has been the Coffee Pump Podcast. Aga, I appreciate you coming on for the
Cheers,
second
man.
time, bro.
Thank you for having me over.
Right, guys, we'll catch you in the next.
That next one.